Want to be in the know on all things cannabis? You're in the right place. Regulations, growing, running the business.
I need a dollar.
Welcome to the $1 Pound Podcast. Here are your hosts, industry professionals Ryan and Joey.
Welcome to another episode of the $1 Pound Show. Today we have some very, very special guests, as far as I'm concerned, some goddamn American heroes. The Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance is here with us today. Actually, we're here with them today. We're actually at their location here in Santa Cruz. Guys, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Not bad.
Today we have Aaron Newsom and Seth Seth Smith. They both work with the Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance, and they do a lot of really great things. So I kind of want you guys to explain who you are and what you do for anyone who may not know.
Sure, I'll start. So, Aaron is one of the co-founders of Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance, as well as the director of operations, and he can tell you more about how he got here and got started with this. I'll let him handle that. Myself, I came from a public policy background after serving 6 years in the Navy and spending about 4.5 years of that overseas in the Middle East as a translator. Came back, went to UCLA, and worked with veterans while I was there. Went out to the East Coast, DC, and did some work with veterans and the State Department, and then went to grad school and came back to California after giving a kidney away to my mom and needing to go into medicinal cannabis. That was the first time that I ever had to use pharmaceutical drugs, painkillers, for any extended period of time. And after that, all my friends and family who were here in California brought me medicinal cannabis instead of the opioids. I dumped all those opioids right away and immediately just started using medicinal cannabis. My mother and stepfather's a Vietnam veteran, mother has lupus. They were already using medicinal cannabis to replace, 2/3 of their medicine cabinet. And so I became a convert at that point. Initially, I thought I was going to need to never use cannabis at all because I was going to be working for the federal government. But once I realized just how beneficial it was for me in dealing with a lot of chronic injuries I had from the military, along with recuperating from the kidney donation, I knew there was something special. And when I came up here to Santa Cruz for the first time, looking really for a program that would help my stepfather, who was a Vietnam veteran out in Fresno, and you guys know the Central Valley, it's a little bit harder to get access to some quality medicine there. So I was hoping that he'd be able to come over the hill to Santa Cruz every once in a while, talk to these guys and get the meds that he needed. And when I got here and saw what was happening with the Veteran Compassion Program meeting, I knew there was something special and I wanted to help these guys out. So I started helping them out from LA for a while, for about a year, just doing what I could when I could. And now, or I guess it was about 7 months ago, they were just like, hey, do you want to come help us full time? And I absolutely did, because I knew kind of the benefit that this was having on the veteran community, that it was having on the larger community, that I knew kind of the potential for veterans operating successfully in this industry, what that could do for helping to remove the stigma broadly around cannabis use and cannabis as an alternative therapeutic treatment for all types of issues, and then also as a way to ensure that folks who may have been involved in the criminal justice system as a result of cannabis were able to still enter the industry, because 1 in 10 of the people in the criminal justice system in the U.S. are military veterans, usually resulting from substance abuse or some other issues related to trauma from their time in service. And so we want to make sure that those folks are also still included in this. And that's, a lot of what these guys are doing here at Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance. That's why I wanted to be a part of it. And it's been awesome. Get to meet cool folks like you who've been doing this for a long time, who are educating us all the time on what's happening policy-wise, locally and at the state level. We've met a lot of great people in the community, just broadly, who've been doing this for a long time, who've been very helpful to us over the years. You guys included, but other manufacturers or growers who've donated to the meeting over the course of many years, who we now get to carry in our own dispensary, because this community's been, very supportive of our efforts. And I think they understand, just like us, that the fact that veterans are doing this, it benefits the entire community. If we're successful at this, then it means the county, the city, the state has, less cause to not allow this to go forward. And so we think that if we're able to do this properly in the right way, it's going to mean that everyone, gets a chance at this, and that people who are in prison for this can get out for this, and that people who have records for this can get those expunged for this, and that people who have a lot of, ailments or illnesses or diseases or issues, chronic issues that can be treated by this can actually get that treatment now versus, what they have now or having nothing at all. So it's an awesome time to be alive.
Yeah, we actually just had a special guest walk in right now. Jason Sweat has joined us. Jason, thanks.
Thank you guys for having us.
Why don't you guys kind of, Aaron, talk about, how you guys came together and how this got started?
So Jason and I met back in 2011. He was working at a local hydroponic store. I had recently moved up here and started cultivating for myself and going to college, trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life. I didn't think that growing my own medicine would ever become this big of a mission, but after running into Jason and finding that he was cultivating medicine for himself as well, it kind of opened up the doors to a whole veteran community of people that were using this as an alternative to some of the harsher pharmaceuticals that were readily available to them through our healthcare system, through the VA. So it started off with just a couple other guys that Jason and I started donating to, mostly older Vietnam veterans who were on disability and Social Security, who really couldn't afford the alternative medicine. They were getting a lot of their opioids and different pharmaceuticals through the VA, and the cost of the medicine was a little bit too much for them. So we started supplementing that with our own grows. At some point, we kind of came together and started cultivating, trying to build the veteran base and build the collective, and try to build this community. So, within the first year or so, we went from 2 veterans that we started with to about 100. And that was really just through grassroots and them talking to one another and spreading the word. But it really, became a pretty big mission for us, when we realized it was a lot bigger than ourselves.
And that was, just to interrupt you real quick, that was 2011 when you started?
Around 2011, yes.
Okay. So it's been 6 years now, going on 7 years coming up, I'm sure.
Yep.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, the other aspect of it was just the horticultural therapy that we both found in cultivating the plant. So horticultural therapy became a big mission of ours as well, getting veterans into the garden to cultivate for themselves, to get over some of their issues and try to reintegrate with cultivation as a therapy. In regards to Seth, as soon as Seth showed up at one of our veteran compassion meetings, we knew he was going to be a big asset to the mission and moving it forward. So we were really glad that he came from LA and moved up here and made the sacrifice to continue on and push this mission forward.
Yeah, that's pretty sick. So it's every 2 weeks, right, that you guys have gatherings where vets are able to attend and get their medicine. Is that correct?
Once a month.
Once a month.
The first Monday of every month.
The first Monday of every month. And you guys have been doing that basically since 2011.
Yeah, it started around 2011. We were actually delivering medicine out to every vet. We would go out and actually interact, sit down in these guys' homes, hear their stories, what's going on with their personal lives and everything. And then a local dispensary here in town offered up their meeting space, and we outgrew that within the first 2 months of meeting up there. And at that time we had moved our meetings to it was twice a month. It was the first and third Mondays of every month. And then after we left the dispensary, the local VFW was gracious enough to allow us to meet in the back of their parking lot, barbecue area and everything for free, no cost. And that lasted, I don't know, about 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. And they gave us the boot probably almost about a year ago. And now we shorten the meetings because now we're having to rent a hall to hold our meetings, and it's a nicer venue. Nobody's like before the VFW. We were meeting outside in the rain, in the cold, in the element and everything, and now we're meeting in a closed doors, very very nice venue and everything, and so we've cut it back down to once a month and everything. But the vets and part of that program, they receive the same type of medicine, the same amount of medicine. That as they were meeting for twice a month.
It's been a rather amazing evolution that you guys have had, because I remember that at the VFW halls, I was brought there by my friend Phil Munoz. I never served in the military. Phil did though. And he said, you got to meet these cats. And that's actually where I first met you guys. That was a really good meeting, actually. That was impressive. I was absolutely stunned about, you had this basket and all the people in the community that were actually growers, manufacturers, they were actually putting in products. Like, they were down for the cause. Because most of our episodes have previously focused on Monterey County, but now that we're like moving out and touching and talking to all of our friends, Santa Cruz, which used to be the hippest spot, is kind of gone nuts in certain ways. It used to seem to be like 20 years ago, the concept was much more progressive about how things would work with cannabis. And then the community kind of went weird on itself very, very drastically. But you guys have done an excellent job getting to this point now. What has your experience been like with the local politicians up to this point? You guys have like the best reputation ever.
It's been a process. I mean, it's taken a lot of time and everything for us to, time and effort we put into it and everything, and it has paid off. I had the opportunity of sitting on the local cannabis cultivation committee that the Board of Supervisors had formed to help the county staff move forward in all of this, the cultivation part of it. And that was over a year ago. Mm-hmm. And we're still stuck, we're going through the EIR process, but we really don't know what the outcome is going to be after the EIR and everything. I see the old timers. I see the guys that have been a main staple of the foundation of the cultivators here in the county, and that have been making a livelihood at it for the past 40 or 50 years. And they're not they're getting left in the wayside over here, because I feel like the county has gotten a little bit more progressive. The politics shifted a little bit. It's not as hippie as it used to be and everything, but it has an environmental consciousness to it. But there's a lot of people that are going to be left out because the county probably won't let them grow in the mountains, or where they've been cultivating for the past 50 years and everything, where they see it as a commodity, agriculture commodity, where it needs to be cultivated down in South County, where all the other strawberries and everything, where commercial ag's taking place and everything, mm-hmm. which is not necessarily the best place for cannabis to be cultivated here in the county. It's been a slow roll. I mean, we're used to it, I guess. We've been in the government. We worked for the federal government and the military. We kind of know like that wheel moves slow, and we just stick to our mission and everything. That finally, it's worked for us and everything.
We've also got to take into account, like for us, this is, for all of us, this is something that's been a long time coming, right? Like, people have been working on this for, like you said, 40 or 50 years. There's folks here, families here who've been growing up in Northern California that have been growing for generations. And there's a lot of people who've been fighting, especially the last two or three decades, for legalization, especially here in the Bay Area, in Monterey Bay Area and the San Francisco Bay Area. And then a lot of people throughout the state who've been working just on criminal justice reform broadly, and ending the drug war broadly for decades, right? And so for us, this is a long time coming, and it's about time. But you got to think from a city staff's perspective, or from a sheriff's perspective, or from a chief of police or a mayor's perspective, this is happening all of a sudden.
Way too fast.
Way too fast, right? Like, this is happening really, really fast. Like, within a year, something that was completely illegal, that you were locking up people for, hunting people down for, stopping or frisking people for, is going to be completely legal and available for sale to anyone who's 21 and above. Like, that's a huge shift in a short period of time. So considering that, both where we're coming from and other groups who've been working on this for a long time, and then also where city governments and local governments, county governments are coming from. I think it's I think it's going pretty all right. It's actually working out. Still a lot of problems. You're still seeing people like Zach Randolph get arrested for having cannabis and charged with a felony in Los Angeles just for having, cannabis on him somewhere. And you're still seeing that throughout the state, people getting arrested for this. At the same time, though, you're seeing a lot of cities and local governments doing, putting their best foot forward to really try to help establish not just a regulated market, but a sustainable regulated market that can help drive the black market out of business and make this just a regular part of life.
And I think another good point, you make a great point, and a point to add on to that is that these government agencies are trying to figure it out before the state has figured it out, which makes it even more complex and hard to navigate. So for those that don't know, we now have SB 94 that passed at the end of June, and we're kind of waiting for these new draft regulations to come out from the state. And so a lot of these counties and cities are trying to create ordinances and rules and regulations without any guidance or understanding of what the state is doing or going to do. And something I kind of wanted to ask you guys related to regulations, for either of you guys, any of you guys, is what has it been like to go from that Prop 215 market that was pretty loose to transition to the city council and now eventually the state? What has it been like to kind of go from the black to the gray to the legal market in your experience?
I mean, it's interesting being in this ever-evolving industry, but it's definitely been something that has been, like Jason was saying, it's a process, and we've kind of, like you were saying before, we tried to maintain somewhat of a good reputation with the county and with local officials and whatnot. We try to be as transparent as possible. I mean, it's at this point, we want to do everything that we can do to help the system move forward. So city council, the board of supervisors, and like we were saying before, we've stood in front of boards of officers in the military to pick up rank. We know the protocols and respect and things like that. I mean, it goes a long way just trying to do things the right way, So that's all we've always tried to do is one, do what's right, and one, do what we believe in, and then two, try to do what's right by the books. So mission first is what we believe in, and let's try to make sure that everybody else understands where we're coming from. And I don't think that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to argue with us if they allow us to sit down and show them where we're coming from. The testimonials that we have from these veterans that are able to get a much better quality of life with this medicine over something else. I mean, we fought for freedom. We should have the freedom to choose our own health care. And that's something that we're not really going to back down on. And as long as, you continue to believe in what you believe in and you're professional about it and respectful about it, I think that goes a long way. And there's, that's really the path we're going to take.
It is to say, though, to have a licensed facility and have the captain from the police department walk through, or the fire marshal from the city or whatever, or city staff or anything like that, or even from the county's perspective and stuff, having people walk through, you're like, holy shit, I didn't ever imagine. It's a relief. I can't speak for everyone. It's a relief off my back. The monkey's off my back. I don't have to worry about, okay, the sheriff's department's calling me, or somebody's calling or whatever, or there's a raid or anything like that. I mean, we have definitely opened everything up to show the transparency. That's a lot of work. Planning, like any normal business wouldn't disclose that kind of information and everything, whereas we have opened everything up and had to and disclose all that information at the local and county level and everything. And I'm pretty sure everybody will have to do it at the state level as well. So we've been in this whole gray area since 1996, and now we've got the states finally decided to regulate everything. And like you said, it's hard to do something when there's no top-down flow from the state to the local level and everything, whereas all these local places are jurisdictions are making the rules, not necessarily might not conform to some of the state rules and everything. So how is that going to take into play? So it's
Yeah, there a lot of places like Monterey County, for example, we're gonna have to go back and amend our ordinance once the state comes out with rules that we can follow. And then it comes down to staff and how much time do they have to do things like that. You know, kind of your point, they can't usually do things as quick as we would like because there's a lot on their plate too. I mean, we got to be honest with that. To try to run a city or a county and all the things that go with that is obviously very time consuming. So
whenever I go to a county board meeting or a city council meeting, I have to remind myself that I know I'm here for some kind of cannabis topic, but this is just one of 1,000 topics that these people have to worry about. Like, they're not as concerned about this as I am.
Right.
So don't take that personally.
Right.
But at the same time, this is very exciting too, right? So like you're saying, counties and local governments are having a hard time figuring out exactly what to do because they would like some kind of guidance from the state. At the same time, it's an exciting time because the counties and local governments that do things in a really good way are going to be the ones that set the model for the state. And California, whatever we do here in California, whatever system we end up with or structure we end up with in the long run is what's going to, be the system or structure for the country going forward, because we're large enough that, our economy is going to set the pace for everyone else. Whatever we do here is what's going to get exported out to every other state that as this comes online. And so that's pretty exciting to know that there's a chance for us to try to do this to set the standard for cannabis, not just for ourselves here in Santa Cruz, but for the state. And as California goes, so goes the country. And, we'll see if we get to export at some point.
Yeah, no, it's very true. It's extremely exciting. And an interesting point that one of our previous guests made about this transition is that it's so backwards from how America usually does things. Usually people just start doing things, then a study comes out, we find out that it's bad, and then we start regulating it, and it gets more and more and more regulated. Usually it's pretty loose. Right now, it's kind of like there is a lot of unknowns from the government's perspective. Like, they're not sure how bad it is for people. We know, because to your point, Seth, we've been in it forever. We've done the research. We've seen the studies. But now it's kind of like they're like, okay, you can do it, but it's incredibly regulated. And then hopefully over time they loosen those regulations as we get closer to the truth of what we're dealing with. So it's an extremely complex and interesting situation when you really think about it and break it down. One thing I wanted to ask you guys about too is, having the experience of being kind of all parts of the industry in the sense of a cultivator, a manufacturer, now a dispensary. How do you think it's going to play out with the supply chain? If you were kind of in charge, how would you regulate that? How would you set that up? Now, luckily with SB 94, distribution isn't forced. So pretty much anybody can become a distributor and distribute their own product, which is excellent. Pretty much how the industry works now. But I was just curious, if you guys have any input on how you would like to see that or what you worry about.
Just a quick point of clarification. We don't actually manufacture yet. We're applying to be able to, but that's going to be part of the answer to this question probably. So, being able to self-distribute is huge. We love that. We love both that there are still going to be distributors that we can potentially deal with that help, move us into new areas or something if we choose to go that route, and we appreciate that we have the ability to self-distribute as a group that cultivates commercially and hopes to manufacture commercially as well. But I think for us the bigger point in there, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but is our ability to now vertically integrate completely. And one of the models we're going to try to show people in cities and counties that allow us to come to them or that we submit applications for is that the ability to vertically integrate is the real thing they're looking for from an organization. Because if the ultimate goal is to make sure that you're driving out the black market, then you need to keep prices as low as possible in the regulated market, as low as possible, and you need to keep products as clean as possible in the regulated market. And vertical integration is what really allows folks to do that. If you're a fully vertically integrated organization, then you're the farmer's market, right? Your flowers are going to cost less than they would because there's no middleman. Your manufactured products are going to cost less than they would otherwise because there's no middleman. And you're going to be able to be much more of a staple in your community because all of your business is located in one location. It's going to be easier for security purposes. It's going to be easier to police, all that kind of stuff. But primarily, it keeps costs so low and keeps prices so low at the end user, at the consumer level, that it ultimately, I think, long term, especially when considering quality testing, all that kind of stuff, the overall knowledge that a patient will have of the product that they're purchasing, that's mandated by the state policy, will drive out the black market as long as prices remain low, and full vertical integration allows for that. And so that's what I'm really excited about the new changes in the state policy. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I actually have a question that leads into that. Aside from having no taxes as like the greatest tax model ever, what do you guys think is actually realistic on, like, what's the current tax model you have in Santa Cruz, and what do you know is coming up with the state?
Well, I know, here in Santa Cruz County, there's a 7% flat tax. It doesn't matter if you're retailing, manufacturing, or cultivating. It's all 7%, which doesn't make a lot of sense, where other places are a lot lower and everything. And especially on a manufacturing standpoint, I mean, a 7% on manufacturing that's steep. And, we said, like Seth touched on the black market and everything, if we're going to start taxing this to a price where, that's going to be able to let the black market thrive into and everything, because we've taxed it basically, 35% and everything. And it's going to be difficult. I wish the county here would basically, work with the retailers and the cultivators and manufacturers to work out an even number between all three. That way, everybody's getting a fair share of it and everything. The state level, I really don't even know. I know it's going to be priced per pound, per ounce. Is that what is it?
Yeah, it's $9.25 an ounce, which is about $148 per pound.
Yeah.
And then they still have it in there about trim too, which hopefully they take that out, because I think it was like $44 a pound of trim, which trim can be worth that much in some cases.
I mean, what other commodity is being taxed at every different point? From the wholesale to retail. I mean, it's a pass through to the retail, right? And now they want to stop it and do like all these added extra steps. I don't know. They really, I think they have big numbers in their heads, which I want to fully support the local and state level, governments and everything. But let's make it fair. We're also looking at other jurisdictions that have a lower tax rate to do business in, the bigger portion of our business. So, I think as a business decision, but like I said, I like Santa Cruz County. I like living here. I don't want to drive to Monterey. I don't want to drive to Sacramento to do business, to do work and everything. But if it comes down to that point and everything, I think that's just a business decision that we're all going to
whatever is going to be the most sustainable, right?
Yeah, correct.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the point of my question was the supply chain. Like, how should this work? Because there's so many variables to the supply chain. And one thing I like to say, geared towards the politicians that are regulating us and setting the taxes, is don't forget that the profit margin of the black market does not cross over into a regulated one. That's a very important point, because you're taxing us as if we're still a black market and we don't have payroll taxes and all these overhead, bills that come up. And that's a huge factor. Like, there's other businesses out there that aren't taxed anywhere near as much, and certainly not taxed every single step along the way. That's a huge problem in Monterey County, is literally every single license type that exists, they taxed each one of them.
Yes.
So the transporter license is no longer, it's attached to the distribution, but they still have a transporter permit available, and they tax that guy. So the transporter's taxed, the distributor's taxed, the testing lab's taxed, manufacturing's taxed. It's like, you guys, that's just not sustainable.
Oh, every time I walk to the county or the city, down here to the city and everything, I have to bring my check, because it's always paying something. I'm always stopping to get a money order to pay something or whatever, It's like, I don't walk in there without paying them something,
Right.
If it's opening for an application or opening for a permit or renewal or something, or just to get the piece of paper that says you have a permit and everything. I don't know any other business that has to follow these rules and everything.
Yeah.
And to touch on, a regulated, unregulated, it's so easy to operate in an unregulated market than a regulated market. And, but we're here to do that. That's our mission, and that we're going to keep that mission. And we've moved beyond that, so way
Right.
back and everything. So.
You guys understand it's part of the growing pains of
course.
being regulated. It's just going to get better over time, and they're going to get more educated and get closer to the truth of cannabis that we already know. And something that's interesting, I just wanted to bring up, I read on the way here, I think we've probably all heard about Nevada having a problem with product. It was mostly due to regulation and not enough distributors, limiting how many distributors there could be, which limited the flow of product. I read another article kind of related to that said the price now has gone up by 200%.
Me too. I saw the same article.
A pound of trim apparently was going for like 150, and now it's like 450. So that's another factor into all this regulation that the politicians have to understand. To Seth's point, we're trying to lower the price as much as possible, and anything you do to affect that and make it go the opposite way is you're not working. It's not working. You're not winning.
I once had a conversation with the city staff and like a committee similar to the committee Jason was mentioning that he was on here in Santa Cruz, for an East Coast city that was in Colorado touring some facilities, and they asked me to talk to them about some stuff. And over the course of the conversation, we learned that in this city, the black market price of an ounce or a pound was still lower than the regulated price and the medicinal price. As soon as we heard that, we were talking to them they were talking about wanting to expand their cultivation permits and maybe expand their dispensaries, and it didn't seem like it was going right, and they didn't really understand why. And as soon as we heard that, we told them, well, that's it right there. Like, until you flip those two things, like you're not doing this right, or you're doing something wrong. So just keep tweaking things until that's right. And ultimately what it was is they just hadn't allotted for enough supply to be grown. And Las Vegas saw the same thing. One was the distributors, but they also just hadn't issued enough cultivation permits either. They were not expecting it to be as big as it was. More people, I don't think they realized that people would like to have cannabis just as much, if not more, than alcohol. And that's what they weren't ready for. And I think California is going to see the same thing, and it's going to be a problem. When the adult use goes into effect next year, in those places, those localities that have put their ordinances in place to allow their dispensaries to flip or do both, then that'll happen. But even in places where they haven't put the ordinances in place yet, the dispensaries are just going to start doing both come January 2nd. I'm pretty certain of that. And in Colorado and Washington State, in Nevada, they saw their numbers of customers at least quadruple, in some cases go up by 5 times.
Wasn't it in Joe? You brought this up the last time. Wasn't it like in Colorado they actually did more sales tax on cannabis products than on alcohol, right?
Yeah. I think there was an article about that, first time in history for.
That's amazing.
For Colorado, at least. I don't know.
I mean, you guys literally are on the front lines again. The war on opioid addiction in this country. What kind of impact have you seen that on you guys?
I mean, like I mentioned, the only time I've ever been prescribed opiates for an extended period of time, I got rid of them in a day and switched to cannabis. Yeah. And I think these guys could tell you.
I had a real personal relationship with opioids. My dad had a car wreck when I was in 8th grade and was prescribed, and this was probably like this is like late 80s and everything, prescribed opioids, painkillers and stuff, and got addicted. And 7 years later, well, it took a toll on his life and everything. It took a toll on our family and everything, where he eventually passed away from his addiction and everything. And that's in Alabama, where if you're growing a plant, you're going to get thrown into jail just like as you were manufacturing methamphetamine. It's the same across-the-board thing. What if there was an alternative at that point for him to use cannabis than opioids, than the Western medicine way of doing things? I don't personally I don't take them. I don't even like taking Tylenol. I like taking cannabis as my medicine.
Yeah, I've had friends and people that I've known get addicted, and through the organization, through the Veterans Compassion Program, we have so many testimonials of people that get addicted or have side effects or issues with it, and have replaced that with cannabis as a safer alternative, and their lives change for the better. They just are able to live life again and have a better quality of life. We have a veteran suicide epidemic. 20, 22, 40 veterans kill themselves every day. Suicides are recorded. The VA doesn't really track a lot of it. Some of the studies that have been completed are of 20 or 30 states. We've never had a complete study of all 50 states and all of the veteran suicides. So who knows whether it's 20 or 40. They say 20. It used to be 22. But whatever it is, there's way too many veterans killing themselves. And I believe that the over-prescription of pharmaceuticals is a big contributor to that. And if this is a small alternative, small way to at least help some, then we should have that right, So it definitely affects a lot of people. A lot of veterans have chronic pain from training. They train hard, They don't train lightly, especially infantry and people out there in the field. They break their backs just hiking, with 70, 80, 90 pounds on their back. So chronic pain is a huge issue, and opioids are usually prescribed for that. So a lot of veterans are prescribed opioids, and a lot of veterans have issues with that. So a lot of them try to treat it as an alternative with cannabis, a lot. And a lot of them won't even come out and say that. The majority of our veterans are Vietnam veterans who have been self-medicating with this since they got back from Vietnam and haven't even told anybody. And now we're trying to create this atmosphere of don't be ashamed and don't be afraid. And say it loudly. Who cares? And let's push this forward and stop hiding it, because it's only hindering the mission. And I can see it personally in a lot of our veterans that it's a huge weight off their shoulders. I self-medicated when I got back with cannabis, and I felt ashamed for a long time and hid it from everybody, just because it was illegal, and a lot of my family is by the books, and I'm usually by the books, and, so it wasn't something that I was like loud and proud about until I found this mission that it was helping so many people, and I'm not going to hide it anymore. So, that's a big aspect of it too, is, we can't be ashamed of it.
I'm sorry.
And the VA doctors, that have the ability, if they know you're taking a legal drug at the federal level, that they will cancel all your prescriptions that you're being provided at the same time. So like they have a pain management contract or whatever. And now that, it has taken a step at the VA where they are allowing states that have medicinal cannabis that recognize it and everything, that there was not any repercussions if that service member veteran tells his primary care doctor that he's supplementing his medicine with cannabis and everything. So
does the VA actually pay for it, or
VA does not pay for it?
Okay.
No, we do.
Nor do they prescribe it.
And VA doctors aren't allowed to prescribe it as policy.
Or recommend it.
Yeah. So no doctors prescribe it. Or
maybe some of them will acknowledge that it's okay, but most veterans hide it.
Well, we're seeing a lot of younger doctors too now these days. Like there are doctors at the VA now who served in the military with us, right, in these wars, and there are now doctors at the VA, came home, went to school, whatever, or they were, they went in. They were in ROTC when 9/11 happened. They served a little bit, did med school, stayed in a little longer, and now they're at the VA, something like that. But these are young, millennial, slightly older doctors who you see the generational divide on it, right? You see that they're completely on board with it. Many of them are probably medicating with it themselves, but they can't prescribe it. They can't recommend it, and the VA doesn't pay for it. In Canada, they do. And long term, we hope that the U.S. VA starts to do that. I think the current Secretary of the VA, Secretary Shulkin, is supportive of more research with cannabis as a potential treatment for PTSD and other issues in veterans than other VA administrators have been in the past. But federally, it's still legal. And until the federal law changes, there's nothing really the VA can do.
Seth, do you know if what is the status as far as the research that the vets are doing technically when it comes to cannabis use and all these other ailments of society?
I mean, I think it's the research. Any cannabis research right now is in jeopardy, basically. There was a study that was commissioned or that was approved by the FDA and the DEA and NIDA to the National Institute for Drug Abuse to research the effectiveness of cannabis as a treatment for PTSD in veterans. This was going to be done through a researcher in Arizona in conjunction with Johns Hopkins University, and I want to say Penn State or maybe New Penn. And that's since all but fallen apart. I think they're having trouble getting the VA in Phoenix to help them identify potential patients who are veterans. The Johns Hopkins has pulled out of the study for whatever reason. That medicine that they're accessing or that they're being sent from NIDA is, of course, you guys have probably seen the reports. At the very least, nothing like what anyone would get at a dispensary here in Santa Cruz or anywhere else in California, and at most moldy, full of pesticides and other microbials and just harmful things that you wouldn't want anyone to ingest, especially not someone who's a medical patient of some kind. So I think the research question is in jeopardy as long as it remains a Schedule I narcotic. That's just going to be a difficult task to get done. So that's the real push, is getting it descheduled. And I think that a lot of people want to see it rescheduled. And now I'm going to be interested to hear from you guys what you think about that, the reschedule versus deschedule argument. Because I think the rescheduling, we might be seeing the beginnings or the middle part of lobbying money from the pharmaceutical industry focusing on rescheduling versus what has been the larger push and the longer push since the beginning of this, which has been complete legalization.
There's been lots of different attempts, and they all failed for descheduling because we still have it, obviously. And there's also been quite a few attempts, I believe, for rescheduling, which have also failed. As far as, I feel the sense of the tide right now. It may make some tactical sense to at least go for rescheduling, but then you get locked in for a while, and then you have the argument of well, then it's only the pharmaceutical companies that are allowed to do the research, which still screws everybody. And there's certainly some merit to that in our culture's history. I think I personally want just straight up descheduling. I think that's the best move. And what was the gentleman's name who actually put the bill?
Cory Booker,
Senator from New Jersey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I'd like to get behind.
He
but
proposed
Obama
that
Jr.?
recently.
Yeah.
I to answer the question too, I think descheduled. Kind of going back to we know the truth, they don't know the truth yet, so they should just deschedule it till they do some more research and figure out. And if after they do their research, they think it should be somewhere on that schedule, then put it somewhere on there. But I think we all know it shouldn't be Schedule I at the very least. Mm-hmm. So, and I kind of want to ask you about the testing too. What that's kind of been like. Because again, regulation usually comes when things kill you. Alcohol kills you, cars can kill you, all these certain things that can kill people, and we know cannabis can't. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't test it. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't be, like Seth was saying, mold-free and all that type of stuff. So what have you seen with the testing in the sense of going from a world where nobody tests for anything, and now we're starting to test for everything?
We're finding a lot of our own research that way. We're all figuring out how to make things cleaner, how to make things better, how to breed things to create better medicinal benefits, higher terpene counts. We're figuring out that terpenes matter. We're figuring out that terpenes have crazy medicinal effects on both spectrums of pain management, relaxation, sleep, even energy, creativity. It's a whole new world. I think it's great. Overregulation, Seth said it great the other day. We really don't want to see this as a race to the bottom. And overtaxation, overregulation is going to make that happen, because the only people that are going to be able to stay in the game are Monsanto and Driscoll and Anheuser and Marlboro and whoever. They're the ones that are going to be able to afford to do that. It's already practically not affordable to stay in the regulated game. We're all probably running on fumes just trying to stay in the game. I'm sure these bigger corporations are just waiting for us to run out of gas. It's a scary field.
And set the foundation for them. In a lot of ways.
But hopefully we can do it right from the very beginning and try and build that reputation and build a name and stay in the game. I think that's what all of us small-time cultivators are trying to do. And we are a small-time cultivator. We just try to create a good product. We try to be consistent. We try to have attention to detail. Even going back to the vertical integration, we really want to stay responsible for this from the beginning to the end. Why not? Why can't we be responsible? I mean, we're going to create a product and then just hand it off, and it's just going to what? Who's going to do what with that? I mean, why can't we be responsible from it from beginning to end? And so far, we've done a really good job at doing that and fighting for that. It took us years to now be able to actually retail that, but now we can do that, which allows us to stay in the legal market once, because our mission originally was we're cultivators, and we're going to donate a portion of everything that we grow back to our veteran patients. It was as simple as that. And then all these laws got written, and all of a sudden, as cultivators, we can't do what we want with our product. Wait, why not? Why can't I give a quarter of my bean crop or corn to my neighbor? Why can't I do that? But now we can, because now we're going to be responsible from cultivation all the way to the retail sale of it, which is awesome. But that's been a crazy fight, so
this is a natural thing when an organization or a business starts to do well and they start to grow and they start to expand. Small scale farmers right now, but I think all of us here would agree the only way to actually do a good job with this and compete in the future is to go as big and as impressive as you possibly can. So someday you'll get to the point where you're at the top and other people will be pissy like all sour grapes because they started out at the same timeline, but then they'll look at you and they'll be like, well, wait a minute, those guys actually crushed it, and I'm angry at them because that monkey has 2 more bananas than I have and they only give me 1 today in the cage. And it just distributive justice kicks in like that. So I get that, but here's the thing: you have an escalation that starts to happen with the business. If you had a timeline, what is the total dream for the SCVA going forth?
Maximum. Like I said, we want to donate a portion of everything that we grow back to disabled veterans in our communities. Mm-hmm. We started it here in Santa Cruz. We would love to expand. Watsonville's opened up their doors. We would grow for the whole nation if we could. Somebody wants to allow us to do that, we'll do it. Why not? Why not? We've also told and tried and pushed for growing product for research at a federal level. And, we're totally continuing, we're willing to do that still.
Do you guys have any interest in hemp?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But right now, it's pretty much the 3 of us here pushing, and a small crew behind us, and, doing the best that we can. Like I said, if a city or a county would open up and allow us to grow for the whole nation, we will. We got 5,000 square feet in Watsonville. That's as big as we can go. Then we'll go that big. We'll pick up permits as fast and as easily as we can, and hopefully they just keep coming, and hopefully we can not only provide great product to the medical cannabis market throughout California, but donate back to those disabled veterans in the communities that need it.
There's a natural, not exactly a filter, but certainly something that slows down expansion, especially in this industry right now. Jason, you sat on the C4. You experienced that for a couple of months. Was that half a year? And then Aaron, you had to go through something similar in Watsonville. So right now we're a lot of hand holding in the communities to get them along the way for this sort of a thing. And then once they see the impact of doing good, then they're all happy and on board. And of course, they're generally quite happy because now tax money starts coming in. So just not picking on any county in particular, but in the beautiful state of California, out of 58 counties, what county has the most vets in the most need with the least amount of resources being provided to them? There's a lot of bad counties right now.
What we would really like to do is go into any county and find veterans that are willing to continue this mission and help that community not only create jobs there for those veterans that need it, but give them a purpose and build that veteran community and build that camaraderie and just spread this mission. So, there's huge veteran communities all over the place.
I think LA has the largest.
I was going to say LA.
What do you know, Sarah?
Yeah, LA's got the largest population of veterans in the country. California's got the largest population of veterans as a state in the country, but these are just because we're the most populous states and one of the most populous cities. And it's a nice climate. A lot of veterans retire to there, that kind of stuff. 1 in 4 of the homeless people in America is a veteran. And like I mentioned earlier, 1 in 10 of the people caught up in the criminal justice system is a veteran. A lot of time, like I said, that's related to substance abuse issues resulting from some kind of trauma. Many cases that can be opioid addiction or something like that. That could be the substance abuse, but only about 44% of all American veterans actually ever enroll at the VA for healthcare. So only about that 44% would be heavily exposed to the potential of opioid addiction. So what's the other 56% doing? Alcohol, hard street drugs, all that kind of stuff, chronic or periodic homelessness, unemployment, and then just a vicious cycle that repeats itself. So if we can go into a community, help them establish this program, help reach those veterans. The thing that I saw when I came to the Veteran Compassion Program meeting for the first time, why I knew I wanted to help, I didn't know exactly what was going on. I just knew I wanted to be a part of it, knew it was something special, because I knew that these guys were capturing a portion of the veteran population that nonprofit organizations and the VA don't capture or don't reach. And through this program, they were exposing these veterans to the VA, to these other nonprofit organizations that had services to provide to them, that had programs specifically for them, or that could help them access medical or disability benefits or educational benefits or employment benefits that they were owed for decades and had just never plugged into. We could do that in every community that we're in. We could do that in any community that wants us. There's veterans in those communities that have never been touched by any of these services or programs that are built specifically for them that would come out for something like this. And we've seen it work here. We get reached out to by veterans all over the country who ask us how they can replicate what we're doing here in their own communities. And so we're happy to go help out. We just need some communities to be on board.
You said, what was it, 54% don't even sign up?
44%.
44%?
So 56% don't. Yeah,
okay.
Don't go.
How many veterans are U.S. citizens right now?
Are U.S. citizens?
Yeah.
Oh, most
no,
veterans.
I mean, I'm sorry. Like, how many veterans are in the U.S.?
Oh, 20 million.
Wow.
About 20 million.
What's our population right now in this country? It's like 300 million or something?
Yeah.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's mostly that World War II, Vietnam era. I mean, you got to remember there was a draft. First off,
Vietnam.
There was World War II, in which there was a draft and everyone served, and then there was Vietnam, which was a draft. Like this last 30 years has been the first 30 years that we haven't had a draft and had all volunteer force or whatever. But now, instead of seeing a draft where so many people are affected and such a wide swath of people make up the veteran community, now you're seeing just a smaller and smaller and smaller portion of the larger American fabric making up that veteran community, and it's the same families being hit multiple times. So that probably now, I mean, based off of the remarks last night from the president regarding Afghanistan, there's a good chance now that a father and son will have served at the same base in Afghanistan within the next 5 years or something like that, or even a father and daughter or a mother and daughter. You know what I'm saying? Within the next 5 years, will have served in the same war at the same place at different times. Multi-generation. It'll be the first multi-generational war that America has ever had.
It's the longest standing war as it is.
It's the longest war now, and it'll be the first multi-generational in the next 5 years if we let it go that way.
We've had two different batches of administrations in there, basically, through Obama's era and before that. I know you guys, you can't talk about it while you're actually in the service. You explained this to me earlier, Seth. We were talking about this as a concept. If you don't want to answer this question, you don't have to, obviously. But I'm going to ask anyway. What's your guys' take on the president's speech last night about going in more? Like, do you anticipate that just means there's going to be that many more people coming out that are fucked up, that need help, that don't technically get it yet from the country? I mean, you guys went in and you had a different concept of what it was going to be like in the military and what your country was, and then I would assume when you got out, it obviously changed when you came back. A lot of the things that you took for granted when you went in, now you cherish them even more. So now the ability to actually comment on the future of this country in the longest war, which is pretty much every one of the patients and people you have been meeting, certainly gone through yourself, that's...
For me, it's just kind of hard seeing that we haven't really made much progress after all the shit we've been through and the friends we've seen pass away over there. It's just, it's hard to even pay attention to anymore, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't listen to that guy's rhetoric. President or whatever you call him and stuff. Yeah, it's just, I don't really pay attention to what's going on in D.C. anymore. I think we've got a bigger fight here, it's sad. It's really sad that this is continuing and there's no end in sight. And now that we're just basically going to give a blank check for spending to go back in there and everything, which leads me to believe, what are we really doing it for? I'm not going to get into any more details and everything, but just same with Iraq early on, a lot of the private industries that were over there in Iraq made a lot of money. Same in Afghanistan. So what's going on? What's the real underlying thing of why we're going back in there? Answer yourself that, like, is it for peacekeeping or is it for profit?
I would say profit, but Seth, you're rather quiet over there.
Yeah, I have no idea. Like I said, this will be the first multi-generational war we've ever had, and it seems like the generation that's in power right now doesn't have the wherewithal or the desire to stop it, and so it's going to be up to us, I guess.
It's going to be up to the next generation. I'm dumping everything I have into my children's future because we can't figure this shit out, and hopefully they can. I mean, it's getting turned so upside down that I hope to God that we focus on our children and the next generation and start putting more emphasis on, what we're doing here right now with us, so that we can figure this out in the future. We need to really focus on education and not make us stupider. We need to make us smarter as a nation and make us better, not sicker. We need to stop eating McDonald's and stop fucking watching TV. Get healthy, get smart, and we'll figure this shit out. We're just getting dumber and dumber.
It's crazy talk. What's wrong with you? It's the end of society here if we do that.
Aaron gets worked up.
When you said turned up, it had some POTUS, a piece of turned up shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. It's wild, man. It's disappointing. It's disheartening. It's depressing to see a little bit. And, I don't think people, we're going to see, like I said, it's a smaller and smaller group of people that volunteer for the military service. So you're going to see a smaller and smaller group of people who come back, and, not everyone, only about 20% of veterans have PTSD or are diagnosed with PTSD at least. So it's not a plague that affects everyone. And even for the people that it affects everyone a little differently. So some people are still able to live or, completely fulfilling lives and deal with their PTSD. Others, it's completely debilitating. And cannabis is something that helps. And it's something that helps that doesn't have some of the harmful side effects or negative side effects of other medications. When it comes to Afghanistan, though, so yeah, you're going to see a smaller and smaller group of people going, but you're going to see several people, something we've never seen before, which will be people that have done over a dozen tours of combat, who return after 25 years serving in the military. So there's a lot of people who have served 25, 30, 35 years in the military. We've never had any or very few who've served, decades of combat during that time. And that's going to be something that's going to be really interesting to take a look at once this is all over, if this ever ends, or just if this continues as those folks start transitioning completely out of the military, not just, getting out after their enlistment's done, but retiring after 30 years of service and 25 of that being spent in combat. That's going to be something we've never seen before. That's going to be something the world hasn't really seen in a long time that we're going to be able to research on a major level. And that's why it's so important that we get to continue to move down this path of legalization for cannabis, of full medical research for cannabis, because there are other countries that have already been doing this for 35 years and are much further ahead of us. So far ahead, in fact, that they prescribe cannabis to their veterans, or even prescribe it to their active duty members while they're serving on active duty, or prescribe it to medics to issue to soldiers on the battlefield after explosions in nasal spray form to combat traumatic brain injuries because they know it has neuroregenerative properties. So we're very far ahead, or we're very far behind when it comes to at a national level when it comes to research of this plant specifically and its cousin hemp, and everything that it could potentially do to benefit us. And I think this announcement from the president and the fact that this is the longest war we've ever had, potentially the first multi-generational war we've ever had, means it's more important than ever that we do everything we can to make sure that veterans and the general public are getting the best treatment and best health care we can provide. And we think cannabis can be a huge part of that.
I actually want to ask you guys a question real quick before we left, because I wanted to ask you guys this question. If we go a little bit over an hour, don't worry about it. Going back to testing real quick, changing the subject completely. Sorry, Ryan. Going back to cannabis. Pesticides are a big issue, especially in my neck of the woods when we look at Monterey County and all the grows being basically next door to row crops that, have planes fly over and drop stuff on them potentially. So a big part of solving that problem or avoiding that problem is indoor growing. And some people speculate and think that over time indoor will die. It'll just be way too expensive. But I kind of feel like it still has a pretty good lifespan considering all these regulations. And you guys being indoor growers, I was curious what you think about the lifespan of indoor growing. Do you think it's going to ever die? Do you think it will always remain?
I mean, personally, as an indoor cultivator, I love it because I can control my environment. It's a sanitary environment. I can keep everything clean. I don't have to worry about planes flying over and crop dusting me. I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. So I love it. However, I know that, the market changes, prices change. It's harder and harder to afford to grow indoors. So I can understand, that thinking. It really all depends on if it stays affordable and cost effective to do so. I mean, to be honest, it's all going to come down to if you can afford to stay in the game. But speaking of people flying over, I actually heard of that the first time. I hadn't even really thought of that. I mean, yeah, in your neck of the woods, I mean, now it's open. People are actually doing it right there in the middle of crops, like you were saying. So I actually heard that is an issue now, and I hadn't really thought of that before because we are all sealed inside. We run sealed environmental agriculture environment, so completely sealed, recirculating. So I had never even really thought of that, but that is a huge issue. So, but at the same time, organic standards are pretty strict. There are a lot of laws on the books already for neighboring farms to farms. There's ag laws. There's a lot of ag laws. There's a lot of different things that have happened already in that regard. So it is manageable. If you're a good neighbor and you're converse with everybody around you, but it's happened in the past and on grapes and on lavender, and I know of $1 million lawsuit that got closed a few years back for somebody who crop dusted a lavender farm.
Oh wow.
So it does happen in ag already, and hopefully we can get to that point of legitimization where we can get insured for things like that, and we can work with all the different regulatory bodies to make sure that things like that are safe. And that's one thing about regulation. It's a headache, and it's expensive, and it's hard, and there's a lot of paperwork and time outside the garden when you used to just be in the garden, but when it comes down to it, it's safety for the end consumer. So, regulation is good up to you don't want to be over-regulated and make it impossible, but you want to make it safe,
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are good points. It makes plenty of sense. If you don't have anything else, Ryan, I just wanted to give these guys a chance to.
No, that's perfect.
Kind of how do people find out about you guys? What's your website? How they connect with you?
They can find us visit our webpage at www.scveteransalliance.com or check us out on Instagram or Facebook at SC Veterans Alliance. And you can stop by the dispensary Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., 2827 South Rodeo Gulch Road here in SoCal, behind Oil Can Henry's. And lowest prices in town. Farm direct, yeah, farm fresh, farm direct. What else? That's about it. Where are you guys at? What are you doing these days?
Yeah. This isn't about us. This is about you guys. They don't care about us.
You know what I mean?
We're here to talk.
Turn off the microphones now, Christina.
But no, I really, really appreciate you guys, taking the time to sit down with us, especially to have all three of you in the same room. I know that's pretty rare because you guys are extremely busy, continuing your mission. So thank you very much for taking the time. And if that's it, I think that's another episode of the $1 Pound Show. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the $1 Pound Podcast with your hosts, Ryan and Joey, online at $1pound.com. We'll catch you next time.